You know, when you start looking at the world and you strip away all the noise, the politics, the stereotypes, the media spin, you begin to see something raw and undeniable about people. And one of the things that has always stood out to me, especially when I've met Muslims or looked at their history, is the deep sense of honor that radiates through that culture. And I don't mean honor in the fake way we use it sometimes in the West, where it's just about pride or ego. I'm talking about honor in the truest, most ancient sense. This thing that comes from responsibility, discipline, loyalty, and a deep connection to something bigger than yourself. Muslims live inside that framework, and it's powerful. Think about it. We live in a world right now where people are searching desperately for meaning. Depression rates are through the roof, anxiety is normalized, people are lost in endless scrolling on their phones, drowning in dopamine spikes with nothing real to anchor them. And then you look at a community of people who stop what they're doing 5 times a day, every day, to literally place their head on the ground and remind themselves, I'm not the center of the universe. That is a reset button for the human ego, built right into their daily lives. That's not just religion, that's psychology, discipline, humility, all wrapped into one. When you meet Muslims, especially those who actually practice their faith with sincerity, you feel this energy around them. It's not about arrogance, it's not about showing off, it's about knowing who they are. There's a clarity in their identity that you rarely see in the modern world. And that clarity comes from knowing they're serving something beyond themselves, and that, man, is the foundation of honor. Look at the Prophet Muhammad's example, for instance. This was a man who transformed not just his society, but entire civilizations. He didn't come from a position of power or wealth. He started with nothing. And yet he built a movement, not through luxury or manipulation, but through integrity and relentless dedication. Muslims look at that legacy, they model their lives after it, and it gives them this internal compass that doesn't waver in the face of trends or fads. That's rare, that's why they're honored. Now, a lot of people in the West misunderstand Islam. They see it through a lens of fear, or they only see headlines that associate Muslims with violence or extremism. But that's not reality. Reality is billions of people across the world who wake up every day, care for their families, protect their communities, and live by a code that demands honesty, respect, and charity. There's this system of values embedded in their daily existence. Zakat, for example, giving away a portion of your wealth every year to those in need. That's built-in compassion. That's a societal honor code in action. Compare that to a world that glorifies hoarding wealth, flexing material possessions, and stepping on people to get ahead. No wonder Muslims hold on to their sense of dignity so fiercely it's tied to their faith, their culture, their very identity. And when you really zoom out and look historically, you see this pattern over and over again. Muslims have produced some of the greatest scientists, philosophers, architects, and warriors in history. Their libraries preserved knowledge when Europe was in the Dark Ages. They were pioneers in medicine, mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy. Why? Because their honor wasn't just about fighting or defending. It was about advancing humanity, making the world better, carrying forward the idea that seeking knowledge is a sacred act. That's a level of integration between spirituality and progress that the modern world desperately needs. Another thing that strikes me is how Muslims honor their families and communities. In a lot of Western societies, individualism has become almost toxic. It's all about me, my goals, my success, my comfort. But in Islam, the family is sacred. Parents are revered. Elders are respected. The community comes before the individual. There's this deep respect for lineage, for roots, for where you come from. That creates stronger bonds, stronger social safety nets, and honestly, stronger people. Honor is not an abstract concept for them. It's lived out every single day in how they treat each other. And think about how this plays out in resilience. Muslims around the world, despite facing colonization, wars, stereotypes, discrimination, and oppression, continue to hold onto their identity with pride. That's not weakness, that's strength, that's honor under fire. That's a people saying, you can strip away our land, our wealth, our power, but you can't take our dignity because it's tied to something eternal. That level of resilience is deeply respected, even by those who don't understand it. When I talk to Muslims or read their history, I see that their sense of honor is tied to the idea of accountability. It's not just about living for yourself, it's about knowing that everything you do has weight, every action, every word, every choice, you're accountable for it. And that accountability isn't just to your boss or your government or even your family. It's to God. That changes how people move through the world. It gives them a seriousness, a focus, that you don't often see in societies where nothing seems sacred anymore. Now, does that mean Muslims are perfect? Of course not. They're human beings like everyone else. They have flaws, conflicts, and contradictions. But what sets them apart is that the framework of their lives constantly pulls them back toward honor. Even when they stumble, the system reminds them prayer, fasting, charity, family obligations. It's like this compass always pointing them back to something higher. And that, over centuries, builds a culture that radiates dignity and commands respect. When you step into a mosque, you feel it immediately. Shoes off, rows of people standing shoulder to shoulder, no rich or poor, no powerful or powerless, everyone equal before God. That's honor. That's humility fused with strength. That's a community built on something unshakable. And I think deep down, even people who aren't Muslim recognize it. They see Muslims praying at airports or fasting during Ramadan or dressing modestly in a hyper, sexualized culture, and even if they don't understand it, they feel that it comes from a place of principle, and people respect principle even when they disagree with it. So when you ask why Muslims are so honored, the answer is layered. It's not just history. It's not just religion. It's the combination of faith, discipline, family, resilience, accountability, and service to others. It's a whole system of living that creates individuals who carry themselves with dignity and communities that stand tall in the face of adversity. And honestly, in a world that's lost its anchor, where so many people feel adrift and meaningless, seeing a culture that still holds on to honor, it's inspiring. It reminds you of what's possible when human beings live for something greater than themselves. If you want to understand why Muslims hold on to this deep sense of honor, you can't just stop at culture or tradition. You have to go into the engine that powers all of it, their belief system. Islam isn't just a set of rituals. It's not just a list of rules. It's an entire world, a framework that gives human beings meaning in every corner of their lives. And when you dig into that framework, you realize why honor flows so naturally from it. At the core of Islam is this unshakable idea of Tawheed, the belief in one God. That might sound simple, but it's incredibly profound. It strips away all illusions of control, all human arrogance, all false idols. It tells you there is one ultimate source of truth, one ultimate judge, one ultimate power, and it's not you. That's a massive reset button for the human ego. If you really internalize that, it forces humility. It forces accountability, and it anchors your sense of identity in something that doesn't change with trends or politics. That's the foundation of Muslim honor. From that foundation comes discipline. Think about prayer. Muslims pray 5 times a day, not when it's convenient, not when they feel like it, but when it's commanded. Dawn, noon, afternoon, sunset, night. That rhythm locks their entire day around remembering what matters. Every time they put their head to the ground, it's a physical act of humility, but it's also a reminder, I'm not in charge here. I serve something greater. In a culture where people chase money, fame, and status like their lives depend on it, imagine the psychological clarity of someone who bows down 5 times a day and reminds themselves that none of that is ultimate. That's how you get men and women who carry themselves with honor. And then there's fasting in Ramadan. It's not just about not eating or drinking. It's about training the self. Imagine waking up before dawn, going the entire day without food or water, in some places under scorching heat, while still working, studying, raising kids, doing business. That's discipline at a level most people in the modern world can't even fathom. But here's the kicker. It's not done for health or looks or some biohacking routine. It's done for God. It's done to purify the soul. And when you break that fast at sunset, surrounded by family, neighbors, even strangers in the mosque, you feel this deep sense of gratitude and unity. That experience builds character. That experience builds honor. Charity, too, is built right into the DNA of Islam. Muslims don't wait for a GoFundMe page or some charity event to tell them to give. It's an obligation. Every year, a percentage of their wealth goes to those in need, and it's not optional, it's a duty. Think about how that shapes a community. It destroys greed before it can rot the soul. It keeps wealth circulating. It creates a system where honor isn't tied to how much you hoard, but how much you give. And that flips the script on what society usually tells us. That success is about stacking up material possessions and showing them off. Now, when you live inside a framework like that, where prayer disciplines your day, fasting disciplines your desires, and charity disciplines your wealth, you naturally start to see yourself as part of something bigger, and that's where honor explodes into every corner of life. You don't just see yourself as an individual. You see yourself as a servant of God, a protector of family, a member of a global community, the Ummah. That word means something powerful. The idea that Muslims, no matter where they are in the world, are connected, bound by faith, by duty, by honor. This is why Muslims are so resilient in the face of adversity, because when one part of the Ummah is suffering, the rest feel it. It's not perfect, nothing is, but the ideal is there. The sense that your honor is tied not just to your own life, but to the well-being of your brothers and sisters, even if they're on the other side of the world. That's a collective conscience. That's honor on a global scale. Another key piece of this belief system is justice. Islam places enormous emphasis on fairness, on protecting the vulnerable, on standing against oppression. And that's not just an abstract concept, it's in their scripture, it's in their law. Muslims are commanded to speak the truth, even if it's against themselves, their families, or their communities. That kind of accountability creates people who are wired to value integrity. And integrity is the root of honor. Look at how Islam treats knowledge. The very first word revealed in the Quran was read, that set the tone for an entire civilization. Seeking knowledge is considered an act of worship. It's honored. And that's why Muslims throughout history built libraries, studied science, developed medicine, and preserved ancient texts. They didn't see a conflict between faith and intellect. They saw them as two sides of the same coin. Honor wasn't just in defending their people. It was in advancing human understanding. And here's another layer. Islam doesn't just give people rules, it gives them meaning. Every act, no matter how small, can be an act of worship if done with the right intention. Feeding your family, working honestly, greeting your neighbor, even smiling. It's all counted as good deeds. That transforms daily life. Suddenly, honor isn't just about big, dramatic gestures. It's in the small, consistent acts that shape who you are. It's in the way you carry yourself every day. That's why Muslims are honored. Because their belief system creates a different kind of human being. One who is disciplined, accountable, resilient, compassionate, and deeply rooted in purpose. You can't fake that. You can't manufacture it with motivational speeches or self-help books. It's baked into the structure of their faith. Now, of course, people fall short. Muslims are human like anyone else, but the beauty of this system is that it constantly pulls them back. Mess up, there's repentance, drift off, prayer brings you back, get arrogant, fasting humbles you, get greedy. Charity resets you. It's this cycle of renewal that keeps their sense of honor alive, generation after generation. And that's the reason why, when you see Muslims standing tall in their identity, even in the face of massive pressure to conform, you realize it's not stubbornness, it's conviction. It's not about rejecting the modern world. It's about not selling out their honor for temporary comfort. And deep down, people respect that. Because we all know how rare it is in a world that constantly pushes us to compromise our values. So, when you put it all together, you see the picture clearly. The honor Muslims carry doesn't come from wealth, status, or even military power. It comes from belief, from living inside a system that demands accountability, discipline, compassion, and resilience. That's why you can't shake it. That's why, no matter what narratives swirl around them, Muslims remain honored. But there's another dimension to this story, because honor isn't just personal, and it's not just cultural. It's also historical. The way Muslims have shaped civilizations, stood against empires, preserved knowledge, and defended their faith. This is where the story takes on a whole new scale. When you zoom out from the individual and the belief system, the story of Muslim honor expands into history itself. You begin to see how entire civilizations were shaped by this code of dignity, resilience, and principle. And the crazy thing is, even today, centuries later, that historical weight is still felt. It's part of why Muslims are honored, not just for who they are individually, but for the legacy they carry. Let's start with the golden age of Islam. Between the 8th and 13th centuries, when much of the Western world was still clawing its way out of darkness, Muslim civilizations were thriving. Baghdad, Damascus, Cairo, Cordoba. These were cities of knowledge, culture, and innovation. They didn't just preserve ancient Greek and Roman texts when Europe forgot them, they built on them. Algebra, chemistry, astronomy, medicine, all advanced by Muslim scholars, they built hospitals, libraries, observatories. They debated philosophy, ethics, and law with rigor that wasn't just intellectual curiosity, it was driven by faith, by the idea that seeking knowledge was a form of worship. That's honor translated into progress for humanity. And it wasn't just science. Look at architecture. The mosques, palaces, gardens, they weren't just buildings. They were symbols of harmony, balance, and beauty inspired by faith. The Alhambra in Spain, the Blue Mosque in Istanbul, the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, these are masterpieces that still leave people in awe today. That's honor expressed through creativity. It's leaving behind something that speaks to generations long after you're gone. But honor wasn't only about art and science. It was also about strength and resilience. Look at the way Muslims defended their lands and their people throughout history. Whether it was against crusaders in the Middle Ages, colonial powers in the modern era, or political oppression in different times, Muslims consistently stood their ground. Sometimes they lost battles, sometimes they faced devastation, but they never let go of their dignity. And that's crucial because honor isn't about never falling. It's about rising again with your identity intact. Think about Salahad in Ayyubi Saladin. This was a man who not only recaptured Jerusalem from the Crusaders but did it with mercy and dignity. When the Crusaders took the city decades earlier, they slaughtered tens of thousands. When Saladin took it back, he spared civilians, allowed Christians to leave peacefully, and respected holy sites. That's not just victory, that's honorable victory. That's strength combined with restraint, and that's why even his enemies respected him. That's the Muslim code of honor in action, or take the Ottoman Empire. For centuries, they didn't just dominate militarily, they governed vast, diverse populations with relative tolerance and justice. Muslims, Christians, and Jews lived under their rule, and while not perfect, the system allowed for coexistence and flourishing. That's what honor does. It doesn't just conquer, it sustains, it protects, it builds legacies that last for hundreds of years. Now fast forward to the colonial era. European powers carved up Muslim lands, exploited resources, dismantled governments, and tried to impose foreign cultures. And yet, Muslims didn't disappear. They didn't just roll over. They resisted sometimes with weapons, sometimes with culture, sometimes with sheer stubbornness. They held onto their faith, their language, their traditions. Even in the face of overwhelming power, they said, "You can take our land, but you can't take our honor." That resilience has echoed into the modern era, and it's why Muslims today still carry their identity with such pride. It's been tested, and it survived, and here's something: wild honor is contagious. When people outside the Muslim world encounter that resilience, that sense of dignity, they respect it, even if they don't share the same beliefs. Think about Malcolm X. He was searching for truth, for identity, for dignity in a world that denied him all of it. And when he encountered Islam, when he saw Muslims from all races standing together as equals in prayer, he realized this was something real. It transformed him, and through him it inspired millions. That's the ripple effect of Muslim honor. It reaches beyond the borders of faith. Even in today's world, with all the stereotypes, Muslims still stand out because they refuse to fully assimilate into the chaos of modern culture. They'll pray in airports, they'll fast during exams, they'll wear hijab in societies that mock them for it. And people notice. Deep down, even critics recognize that this comes from conviction, and conviction is magnetic. It's rare. In a world of compromise, the ones who don't bend become unforgettable. That's why Muslims continue to be honored, whether people agree with them or not. But there's another layer here. Honor for Muslims isn't just about defending themselves, it's about service. It's about giving. Look at the countless hospitals, schools, charities, and relief efforts driven by Muslim communities. Look at how, in times of disaster, Muslims often mobilize through mosques and organizations to send aid. That's honor, using your strength for others. That's what makes people respect them, even beyond religion. And the legacy isn't just historical, it's alive right now. Young Muslims in the modern world are carrying this tradition forward. They're doctors, engineers, artists, athletes, entrepreneurs, but they still root themselves in their faith. They still carry that compass of prayer, fasting, charity, and family. And that combination, modern success anchored by timeless principles, creates a kind of person that stands out in the 21st century. That's why you see Muslims celebrated not just in their communities, but globally. Their honor transcends stereotypes. At the end of the day, honor is about how you live, how you treat others, how you carry yourself under pressure, and what legacy you leave behind. And when you look at Muslims individually, culturally, historically, you see a people who embody that at every level. That's why, despite centuries of challenges, despite media distortions, despite all the noise, Muslims are still honored. Not just by themselves, but by anyone who takes a closer look at who they are and what they stand for. And maybe that's the real lesson here. In a world that's losing its sense of meaning, its sense of dignity, Muslims remind us of something ancient and timeless. They remind us that honor isn't about ego or wealth or power. It's about service, discipline, resilience, and faith. And when you see that lived out in real time, generation after generation, you can't help but respect it. You can't help but honor it. That's the powerful reason Muslims are so honored. It's not one thing. It's everything. It's belief, discipline, history, resilience, service, and above all, a deep connection to something greater than themselves. And maybe, just maybe, in a world that's starving for meaning, that's exactly what we all need to pay attention to.